Hello, welcome, good evening. Welcome to PEO's 2025 Council Election All Candidate Meetings. My name is Marisa Sterling, and I will be the moderator for tonight's discussion. Tonight, we will hear from the candidates for Eastern Region Councillor. The two candidates for this position are Susan Shee and Tim Kirkby. The electronic meetings with the candidates via webcast enable voters to learn more about the candidates and PEO issues. And we hope that more Ontario engineers will vote and be better informed, having heard directly from the candidates. Candidates were provided with some questions in advance, and Ontario engineers were able to post questions online in advance of this discussion, and we'll try to get to as many questions as possible. In accordance with the approved protocol for the all candidate meetings, as moderator, I may shorten the questions and not read out preambles to questions, may select any question, may remove offensive and duplicate questions, and may ask questions not on the platform. Each candidate will be provided 2 minutes for opening remarks. After that, I will then direct a question to the first candidate. That candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. After the candidate has responded, the remaining candidate will have 1 minute to address the first candidate's response to the question. Following the question period, the candidates will have 90 seconds each for closing remarks, and the order of speakers was determined by a draw earlier this evening. Please note that the views and opinions expressed on this broadcast do not necessarily reflect the views of PEO and are the responsibilities of the candidates. So without further delay, let's get started with the opening remarks. The first candidate for Eastern Region Councillor is Susan Shee. Susan, please go ahead, and you have 2 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight for the Eastern Regional Councillor All Candidates meeting. My name is Susan Shee. I live and work in Kingston, Ontario. I have been working in the consulting industry for close to 15 years now, providing design services to local municipalities, utilities companies, industries, as well as Indigenous clients on their water and wastewater infrastructure needs. I understand that the key ingredients that make a successful project and a positive client relationship are often open communication, honesty, trust, a solution-driven mindset, and a supportive team. I started volunteering for PEO Kingston chapter in 2016 and have always wanted to give back to the profession. I have successfully led the Licensure Assistance Program before moving on to the Treasurer, Vice Chair, and the Chair positions. I'm currently the Chair of the PEO Kingston chapter. I understand that the roles and responsibilities of a councillor is very different than the chapter volunteer, and being on council requires a different mindset. I believe that interactions and relationships I have built with Eastern Regional chapter leaders are an invaluable asset to my understanding of the local issues. Throughout tonight's session, I'm hoping to share my thoughts on the importance of building strong relationships with internal and external stakeholders, the importance of communications, the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusivity, as well as PEO's place as a regulator in the fast-changing world. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Susan. Now, the second candidate for Eastern Region Councillor is Tim Kirkby. Tim, please go ahead with your opening remarks, and you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Marissa. So who am I? My name is Tim Kirkby. I'm a licensed civil engineer. My hometown was Gananoque. So I was in the Gananoque, Kingston, Brockville, Thousand Islands area. And living in that area, I was quite pleased to be offered a job by the Canadian Coast Guard in Prescott, Ontario, which is where I worked. And what attracted the Coast Guard to me was that I was a river rat, a Thousand Islands river rat. So growing up in Gananoque, my dad had a welding structural steel business. And from being a young kid, young boy actually, I learned the trade of welding. So at one point in my life, I was going to be a welder. I wasn't going to be an engineer. I moved to Cornwall to work with Parks Canada. I currently live in Somerstown, Ontario. I've been volunteering my complete life. I love helping people. It's important to me to do that. I have a wife and 4 kids. I've volunteered for the Cornwall Hospital, the United Way president, chief fundraiser, volunteered with municipal and federal government. And I have been in this position that I'm competing for tonight as the Eastern Regional Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim. So that now concludes the opening remarks segment. And so now let's go to our audience questions. So the first question will be for Susan. Susan, the role of Eastern Regional Councillor is to be on the Board of Governors for Professional Engineers Ontario. And so can you talk a little bit about, what is the core mandate of PEO?
So the core mandate of PEO obviously is to serve and protect the public interest. And we have to make sure that PEO as an organization, as a self-regulator, set and uphold the high academic and experience requirements, as well as our professional practice standards. So council is ultimately responsible to make sure that we carry out all these mandates and duties under the Professional Engineers Act.
Thanks very much, Susan. Tim, how would you like to respond to what you heard from Susan on this question?
PEO's core mandate. PEO's core mandate has to do with protecting the public interest, has to do with licensing, discipline, investigating complaints, and beginning action against non-licensed people. Working as an engineer. So that's the core mandate, and that's how I see it. I think it's pretty simple. It's just those four things: licensing, discipline, investigating complaints, and actions against non-licensed people. That's it.
Thank you very much. So let's move on that to our next question to talk a little bit about the role that you're seeking election to. So what do you see as your role as a councillor on the board of directors for PEO? And I'll start with you, Tim.
Yeah, it's my turn, right? Is it?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. Role of councillor, I've been a councillor, is to focus on governance, not operations. Is to listen as a councillor, is to be prepared, to participate, to understand, and to vote, not to abstain. Is to respect the councillor's code of conduct, to working with all the councillors, and you also have to understand a meeting's rules of order, how they operate, how they work. And you have to, and then when council does make a decision, you have to respect that council's decision and support it, even though you may have voted against it. So that's a role of a councillor. It's an interesting role, and it's something which I have done in my past. So lightning round, Melissa, that's my quick answer. I'm under the minute.
Thanks very much, Tim. And Susan, what would be your reflection and response to this question about what do you see as the role of the council that you're seeking the position for, the councillor role, on the board of directors of PEO?
Yes, I completely agree with what Tim had just mentioned. And what I would like to mention is that I'm a practicing engineer. I work regularly with EIT's engineering graduates, fellow engineers, clients, the public, government, stakeholder agencies, as well as the Indigenous groups. I want to bring my experience to PEO Council as I'm immersed in the ongoing trend, the hot topics out there, the issues, the challenges, and the opinions our members may have on PEO. To best protect the public interest, I believe that the council needs to leverage and use knowledge and experience from a working, practicing engineer, and to gain some fresh perspectives and better understand the key issues. And to be honest, I'm very glad to see that. I've been watching the all candidates meeting over the past day or so, and I'm very glad to see that we have practicing working engineers running for council this year. And I think we need to work together to better align with PEO's strategic plan, the goal to ensure that the stakeholders and members see relevance of PEO.
Thank you very much, Susan. So I'll move to the next question. Susan, I'll have you kick it off first. But can you tell, and most of you covered this in your opening remarks, but can you tell the audience a little bit more about the special skills that you bring to enhance the governance of PEO?
Yes, absolutely. So like I mentioned previously, I have been with the PEO Kingston chapter for over 8 years now, and I've served in all officer positions. And I frequently communicate with the headquarters and participate in Eastern Regional Congresses that Tim used to lead. So again, I'm aware of the ongoing issues and ongoing changes by PEO, and I believe that PEO needs a cohesive board, a board that's open-minded and willing to collaborate and willing to trust the staff and its volunteers. PEO council needs to have one voice. Like Tim has mentioned previously, once a decision has been made, I think we have to speak positively about the decision and inform our members accordingly. A few endorsements I have received during the campaign speak to the fact that I strive to make positive changes and positive impacts at the local level. And also, I have a deep passion for supporting engineers, EITs, and engineering graduates and fostering growth in the team environment.
Thank you very much for sharing that, Susan. And Tim, what about yourself? What sort of special skills do you bring to enhance the governance of PEO?
My special skills is that I have been on council in the past as a lieutenant government appointee. So I've served a term as on council in that role. I've also been an elected councillor with PEO. With PEO, I've chaired their finance committee. Matter of fact, I was the finance committee chair that delivered the very last finance report. That was in April of 24. But I also chaired their investment committee. A vote of council members about a year and a half ago was a vote that I won to be a member of the Board of Engineers Canada. So I'm a member of that board, which is a board which works with the 12 regulators. And nationally, I've also worked with Professional Institute of Public Service of Canada, with federal government engineers, and finally, we've been recognized by PEO with the Order of Honor. And also, I've also been chapter chair of the Cornwall chapter for a number of years and served in every role in that chapter. That's it.
Thank you very much. I heard in one of the responses a bit of a discussion around how PEO engages with stakeholders. So I'm going to start with you, Tim, and I'd like you to share, what do you think are some of PEO's key stakeholder groups and organizations, and how does PEO meaningfully engage with them?
Okay, just a second, please. Okay, PEO's key stakeholders. There's a number of them. One is Engineers Canada, and Engineers Canada works with accreditation and qualifications and with the 12 regulators. I also, key stakeholder is the university deans of engineering. Another key stakeholder is employers themselves, employers of all levels of government, employers of sole practitioners, employers, consulting engineers. Members themselves are key stakeholders. In Ontario, OSPI is a key stakeholder, the advocacy group that works with PEO, and so is OSET. So that's a number of key stakeholders.
Thank you very much. And Susan, how would you like to comment or add to that around, who do you think the key stakeholders are for PEO, and what is meaningful engagement with them?
Absolutely. I think all stakeholders are equally important to us. And one of the key stakeholders that, again, just based on my experience with the chapter system is that it's the volunteers, it's the chapter volunteers. Because we are the grassroots participation portion of the PEO organization, and we have the fingers on the pulse. There is there's right forum for the feedback through the regional councillor committee, the RCC. We need to leverage that and empower the volunteers at the chapter level to keep council informed of the issues. And the perfect example is the reinstatement of EIT program. The Eastern Regional chapter leaders got together at the Congress and repeatedly requested the reinstatement of the EIT program and emphasized on the importance of it. I'm sure that all the other chapters have said the same thing. So I'm glad to see that there are changes happening. So again, chapter volunteers is extremely important.
Thank you very much. So Susan, I'll start with you for the next question, and just building on your comment around volunteers. So what do you think is the appropriate role of a volunteer in a regulatory body? What do you think volunteers should and should not be doing at PEO?
So PEO cannot function without volunteers. We have an amazing group of volunteers who are dedicated, who is willing to give their time and make our profession better. So I recently attended the PEO Volunteer Symposium, and it has made very clear to me that there is a large number of us out there. Volunteers always have to follow direction from PEO headquarters. And I think there are processes in place now to onboard all the new volunteers. And this is a very good thing to streamline that process. Volunteer training also are being provided, in terms of the various different elements before they can even attend our meeting or participate at the chapter level. So I think PEO is doing what they can to equip the volunteers with the knowledge and the skill set. So similar to council, I believe that the volunteers need to speak with one voice and a positive voice.
Thank you very much. And Tim, what are your thoughts?
Okay. Can you give me the question again? I was scrambling to look at the note here.
Yeah, no worries. The question is, what do you think is the appropriate role of a volunteer at a regulatory body? What do you think volunteers should do and should not do at PEO?
Oh, okay, sure. As a counselor, as a volunteer, in the past, the counselor volunteer was very much focused on operational issues, operational topics. But with the changes on council, now the focus is on governance. It's a governance board. So the role really is to stay at that level. So the governance board really looks at setting a strategic plan, a strategic vision, from the vision it's a plan. And then it's to, as the volunteer on that board, is to stay focused on governance, and to also then after you set the strategic plan and from the vision, then it's too important just to measure the effectiveness of what's been done against that plan. So it's to stay thinking in the area of governance. That's the role of councillor as the volunteer on the board.
Thank you very much, Tim. So the next question will start with you, Tim, and we'll actually build on your comments around governance. So looking at a modern regulatory body that has operational work and governance work, where do you draw the line between the two in terms of what work is operational and what work is governance?
I think I kind of almost answered that question in my last answer, but it's to not get involved in operations, to realize that council sets from the vision, sets the plan, and can ask questions to measure, well, how well is it going against accomplishing the work against the strategic plan. But it's to recognize the fact that PEO has an excellent CEO, and that CEO is given the work of actually delivering the operation. And we're really blessed in Ontario because that CEO has now complemented her staff by bringing in some excellent employees who all are charged with responsibilities in the area of operations, finance, governance. And so that's really where it's at.
Thank you very much. And Susan, what are your thoughts around, where do you draw the line between operational roles and governance roles for a modern regulator?
I think, first of all, the governance role and the operational role needs to, the two arms need to work together for us to be an effective self-regulator. And, we need to build trust and respect, and there always needs to be collaboration. And I totally agree with Tim. We have a very strong operational team right now under the leadership of our CEO and registrar. And I think council needs to rely on the staff to collect information and to operationalize these strategic directions. And I think council needs to listen to their opinions, and I think their opinions are extremely important. However, council is ultimately responsible for making sure that PEO carries out all these mandating duties. So CEO registrar being the only employee of the council, just like any other employment relationships, council needs to monitor the performance and have metrics in place and providing feedback in response.
Thanks very much, Susan. The next question, I'll start with you, Susan, and it touches on what I heard a little bit earlier around engineering interns or EITs. So at a recent council meeting, the councillors directed the staff to come back with some proposals for a new EIT program. And so I want to hear, what is your vision for PEO's role and the place of engineering interns in the profession?
This is a great question. I mean, I work with EITs, I work with engineering interns all the time. And I think that it is extremely important that we reinstate the EIT program. Like I mentioned, I think all the members have spoken up, and we would like to see EIT programs being brought back. I think one of the important aspect of it is that, you know, a lot of the EITs or even our members, they see PEO as an organization where they get their license from, and sometimes they disconnect and they're no longer engaged. And this is one of the things I would like to talk about a bit further, maybe later tonight, is about the relevance, how members see PEO as relevant, and making sure that whoever got through the licensing process still stay engaged, and making sure that we have the members supporting our initiatives.
Thank you very much. Tim, what are your thoughts?
I'm very much supportive of bringing back the EIT program. Actually, when the EIT program was discontinued or stood down, the word to council was that it would be back. It was coming back. The difficulty was when it was stood down was that there was, of the, say, 80,000 members of PEO in Ontario, about 22,000 of them were EITs. And a lot of them were EITs for a very long period of time. So there really wasn't. The EIT program of the past really wasn't managed well to help those that really wanted to get licensed that were EITs. So so what's coming back is something which will work with the EITs, the young engineers or the immigrant engineers who want to pursue their license. It's a positive move. I was in the council room when the decision was made to bring.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you. So, Tim, we'll start with you with the next question.
Yeah.
In terms of sort of challenges facing PEO, we've heard a little bit about engagement. We've just talked recently about the role of engineering interns. Tell me, what do you see as the most important challenge facing PEO today? And based on what that is, what do you think council should do to address it?
Okay, there are challenges. The challenges particularly relate to relevance, where a large majority of engineering graduates from university have no interest in seeking to get their license. That needs to change. So another challenge has to do with artificial intelligence and how it's going to affect engineering education, where that's going. There's a number of challenges. There's a third challenge which I work with the Qualifications Board of Engineers Canada, and that's to do with the Canadian Accreditation Board, and how we're going to be working with the licensing models related to education. Because I think it's like 60% of the applicants that are coming in applying for the license now are not from accredited engineering schools. So licensing, accreditation, and we need to collaborate with the 12 regulators. And one final thought is emerging.
I'll just, thanks very much, Tim. I'll need to move over to Susan. That's okay. So Susan, I'll just restate the question for you. You know, what do you see as the most important challenge facing PEO today? And what do you think council should do about that?
Yes, absolutely. I think the most important challenge facing PEO today is the fast-changing world and how we respond to all these external risks and threats with the ultimate goal of protecting the public interest. And I'm glad that Tim brought up the AI, because I'm going to use AI as an example. And again, artificial intelligence, we see this coming up in the news, at technical talks, conferences, in academia. The reality is that the younger generations are all using it. For example, consulting firms we are using AI. Many of these larger firms now have chief technology officers looking at implementing these technological advancements in daily engineering work. And this is promising trend in terms of reducing the time spent on repetitive tasks. But at what point does it start to affect and intersect with public interest? Should PEO be proactively consulting with the stakeholders and gaining understanding of the use of the AI in practicing of the engineering? I think as council, you know, we should. We need to proactively manage these risks following the risk-based approach that was adopted in 2023.
Thank you very much, Susan. So I'm going to pick up on what I just heard there around some of the societal issues and the role of PEO in them, such as AI. So the question, I'll start with you, Susan, first. This came from the audience, the broader audience of Ontario licensed engineers. You know, one of the aims of PEO is to protect the public, then what is PEO's role in advising or commenting as various sort of proposals and solutions come forward from governments and organizations around some of these public policy and public issues? So, what is the role of PEO in speaking up, if at all, on proposals that come forward that can affect the public interest in regards to engineering?
Yes, absolutely. I think, again, with all these emerging threats and risks and stuff like that outside, I think we need to think about it. It's from the core mandate perspective, like you mentioned, it's protecting the public interest, and we also have to bring it back to that point. And we as PEO, we have to do our due diligence in terms of doing environmental scans of what others are doing out there, in terms of supporting an informed decision. So collaboration is important. Again, like I mentioned previously, reaching out to other organizations to understand what are the risks and whether it actually affects the practice of engineering. And some of the threats may or may not affect all disciplines equally. And I think we all have to understand that.
Thank you. Tim, what about yourself? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so if I understand the question properly, it has to do with something that's very major that's going to affect engineering, and should PEO Council do something about that? So what I'm going to suggest is, first of all, that whatever that is, there needs to be time set aside on a PEO Council, so PEO Council can become educated on that, whatever that issue is, and discuss it. And I actually think that PEO needs to do more of that at council, where in the past there's been a lot of time spent on governance changes, governance this, governance that. I think there needs to be more effort on this type of issue at the PEO Council table. And once PEO Council does understand it, I think it's important to bring in the board members from Engineers Canada and have them understand it, so that they can bring this whole topic to all 12 regulators during a board meeting with Engineers Canada.
Thank you very much. And Tim, we'll go to you for the next question.
Sure.
And one of it came from the audience, the members. One of the issues that arose was climate change. And the question is, should PEO provide guidance and comment on climate change from an engineer's perspective? The question was, should the PEO aim towards developing an action plan on climate change to provide guidance to the PEO and its members? What are your thoughts?
Quite quickly, so I have a history with this. Is my time? Let's go quite quickly. I have a history on this very topic as a PEO councillor. So there was a motion brought forward at the PEO Council table to do just this, to bring in some action and standards and guidance on climate change, and I believe I'm on the voting record as being fully supportive of doing this. I think it is important. We all are living with climate change today and the effects that it's having. I think it's time for PEO to be involved, be actively involved, and move forward with some improvements in this area. So I fully support doing this.
Thank you. Susan, what are your thoughts?
Climate change is a topic it's very close to my heart. I'm an environmental engineer, and I work in the consulting industry, where I advise clients on a daily basis as to how to, accommodate these potential climate change issues and how to build resiliency in their infrastructure, in their water, wastewater infrastructure. And to me, I think there is a place, and this is a very important topic for PEO to consider. And, going through, the PEO practice and guidelines, I think it does reference Engineers Canada's guidance on the subject, and whether PEO wants to take a lead on, developing some of more provincially specific guidelines for practitioners. I think any kind of guidance this will be extremely welcomed by practitioners.
Thank you very much. Listen, our next question, we'll start with you, Susan. Again, it comes from the broader audience, and it talks a little bit about chapters and engagement, which both of you have already touched on a little bit. So the question is, what's the value of the chapter system, and specifically, is there value in creating another chapter for Ontario engineers who maybe are out of the province or out of the country. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so chapter is one of the functions and activities of PEO. And for those of us who are engaged with the chapter system, I think we thoroughly enjoy being at the chapter. And, you know, I think it's important to have chapters at the various different regions, so then we have and maintain this grassroots participation. And this is one of the kind of heavily discussed topics at one of the strategic planning sessions that I was involved in very recently, looking at what are the chapter's roles in the future of PEO. And I think there is consensus as to how the chapter system is an incubator for future PEO council candidates, and that the council, like the chapter system, is extremely important. So I do hope that the council can look at that and can look at the feedback. And in terms of additional chapters for out of province candidates, I think there is always room for improvement.
Thank you. Tim, what are your thoughts?
Chapters. I actually began as a volunteer in a chapter and filled every role of the chapter. What do I think about the value of chapters? When through 2020, 2022, when the Harry Caton report was out, he was actually suggesting that chapters be done away with because they were not performing any regulatory function and had no value. As a councillor at that time, I disagreed with that opinion, as a few of us did, but it looked like chapters were going to be eliminated. Well, they're still here, and there was recently a consultant engaged by PEO to look at the value of chapters. And in his report, his words were, "PEO, you got it right. You kept chapters. Chapters are very valuable for communications purposes, for developing volunteers." And he fully supported him and told us we did a great job in keeping chapters. I don't know about a USA chapter. I don't know whether that's possible.
Thanks very much. So we've talked a bit about engagement and what PEO can do to enhance delivery of its mandate. So I just want to ask both of you, I'll start with you, Tim. Is there anything else that you think PEO can and should do to enhance how it protects the public interest?
Anything else it should do to protect the public interest? It needed to improve its licensing process. Yeah, so that's something that is an ongoing effort and has improved immensely. So the improving of licensing is so important. I think there's a time deadline that from when an applicant applies to when they should have a decision on whether or not they're going to be licensed. I think that we're now hitting at about a 4-month period now. In the past, it could have been a year and a half, 2 years before an applicant would hear. So that's something that's important. The other thing they could be doing is communications with the public itself, to advertise, to show there's value in engineers and what they do. Engineers Canada do that. They've been doing some ads to try to improve the image of PEO and to educate the public and how engineers protect the public.
Thank you very much. And Susan, what about yourself? Is there anything else that PEO can and should be doing to enhance its public interest protection mandate?
So I think PEO needs to make sure that our own members and our future license holders see the value and relevance. So again, like I mentioned previously, we shouldn't be viewed as an organization where people just get their license and nothing else. I think we need to remove the barriers in licensing processes to make sure it's equitable, fair, and timely, because there's always a demand of qualified engineers out there. And how do we make sure that our profession grow? And we need to listen to our members, and we have to implement changes.
Thanks, Susan. The next question is going to be our last of the open questions for tonight. And I'm going to start with you, Susan, and actually builds on what you just touched on here. What is your stance on what PEO is doing or could be doing to be more inclusive and accessible? I'll just say it again. What is your stance on what PEO is doing or could be doing to be more inclusive and accessible?
I think one of the key elements is the Anti-Racism and Equity Code that was recently by council. So they are getting principles available, and then based on my understanding is that we are tracking changes and we are monitoring the progress, and we're in the preliminary stages of rolling out the various different programs. I think we need to stay on top of it. We need to make sure that we're progressing in a timely manner and make sure that, you know, any elements that, you know, it's within the PEO operation, as well as the governance elements, the licensing aspects, line up with what's being required under the Anti-Racism and Equity Code.
Thank you very much. And Tim, over to you. I'll just repeat the question. This is our last open question for the night.
Hey.
What is your stance on what PEO is doing or could be doing to be more inclusive and accessible?
Okay, I'm going to talk about could be doing. PEO over the last few years had set something called a target 30 by 30 program, which is where they're going to try to encourage women or female to be more involved in engineering, because we were looking at the stats, the number of graduate male female rates were almost all male. It's very low. So the thought was to try to encourage more females to be involved. But we need to also be inclusive with all the different genders that there are today. There's something like about 30 different genders today. So we need to improve our education on what that is exactly. So something which I think PEO could easily do right now is to be involved with schools, public schools, high schools, and even university to educate potential interest in engineering. So be at the front of the schools.
Thank you both very much. So this concludes the question portion of the meeting. And now each candidate will have 90 seconds for their closing remarks. So Susan Shi will have your closing remarks. Again, you have 90 seconds. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. I hope that you get to know me a little bit better, because I'm a fresh face at the council election table. I want to let you know that I never really shy away from a good challenge, and I'm known for getting things done. I'm energized and I'm ready to hit the ground running, and I want to amplify the voices of working engineers at the PEO council table. I am committed to building strong relationships with fellow councillors, CEO registrar, staff, as well as regional chapter leaders. I'm committed to always representing PEO in a positive manner, making meaningful connections with our members, and acting as a channel between the members and council. I'm also committed to empowering young and seasoned professionals to be engaged with PEO and ensuring that members see relevance and value of us. I'm committed to joining the push towards a modernized profession in a changing world. So please feel free to reach out to me directly on LinkedIn or through email, or you can give me a call. I am more than happy to listen to the concerns, the challenges out there, and hopefully all together we can make PEO a better, modern self-regulator.
Thank you very much, Susan. So now we'll hear from Tim Kirkby. Please, your closing remarks, and you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. So I have been an Eastern Regional Councillor, and I've worked with all the chapters within Eastern Region, and I always try my best, always. And I've been recognized in recognition within PEO. My volunteer work's been recognized with the Order of Honor. With another organization I volunteer with, PIPS, I'm a life member. To become a life member, you have to have demonstrated 10 years of outstanding work and contributions. I've also with Treasury Board of Canada. I chaired last year's PEO's Finance Committee. I've been involved in the Discipline Committee of PEO, so I have been involved. But tonight's moment of my life will live forever in my memory. I thank PEO, my supporters, my friends, my family for helping and being with me as I achieved my incredible goal of becoming a licensed engineer, a goal which all of you listening tonight have done too. It's a heck of an accomplishment. I'm currently a board member of Engineers Canada, and I'm seeking your vote to return to the Council of PEO. Tim Kirkby, thank you.
Thanks very much, Tim. So this now concludes tonight's discussion. I would like to thank the candidates for their participation and also all of you that are watching online for your interest in the governance of the engineering profession. I hope you found the meeting to be informative and worthwhile. As a reminder, a recording of all meetings will be on PEO's website for the duration of the election. Thank you again to everyone for participating in our discussion. And remember, your profession matters and so does your vote. Voting is quick and easy. You can vote on the internet or by phone. Voting opens on Monday, January 27th and closes at 10 a.m. on Monday, February the 24th. And all the information you need is on the website at peovote.ca. That's peovote.ca. Good night.
Thank you.